Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's Alicia here at Cosmic Gateway. I am very excited to introduce my guest here with me today. So we're recording this. It's Tuesday, the 4th of July, 2023, and I felt it was kind of an auspicious day to sit down and do this recording. So I am joined here with Lisa M. Harrison. If you don't know her, um, if you don't, please get on her platforms. I will put all the details in the link. I almost feel like if you don't know her, like where have you been? So I'm pretty excited to share space with you today. I have, I've known of you since 2009, since the beginning, thanks to my dad who put me onto your YouTube
Oh,
channel.
really? Yeah, wow.
So I have been following along for the best part of your journey, and through a series of occurrences at the end of last year, we got connected, and I think that was a really important time and a really important connection to take place. So as I've got to know Lisa over that period of time, we've shared a lot and realized how much commonality we've had,
Absolutely. Yeah.
which has been absolutely not mind blowing and highly activating. So I thought let's do this conversation and see what comes through and what we can share, and hopefully put out some good information that will give a lot of people some ahas along the way. So welcome, Lisa. Thank you so much for being here.
So nice to be on Cosmic Gateway.
Oh, wow. It feels like I was kind of reflecting this morning. I was like, wow, it feels like it was not that long ago that we were like exchanging on Telegram, and then here we are. So, um,
And everything about those little synchronicities that brought us together in the first place. I mean,
you
you can't make this shit up, as they say.
certainly can't. Certainly can't. Well, I thought if you don't mind, for those who aren't familiar with who you are and a bit of background of your story, I thought I'd get you to share because I love hearing the story anyway.
Well, like you said, I've been online since 2009, which I think makes me a relic. Um, but I started publicly interviewing people in 2009 with a focus on 2012. 2012 came into my life personally in the 90s, and it just seemed like it was a lifetime away back then. But we hit 2009 and it was like, well, now this thing's around the corner. I want to know if there's actually anything in it, really. So I started doing interviews on that, which probably didn't take too long to broaden out actually beyond that. Um, as a result of a couple of things, whistleblowers coming out with all kinds of information, people requesting interviews on subjects other than 2012. So sort of covering all the conspiracies at one point. And then 2012 happened, obviously, in 2013.
I have two questions I want to backtrack. So
Sure.
first of all, the calling to set up and do a podcast and interview people, um, just maybe for those who have that calling and pull and haven't done that, I'd love you to share a little bit more about like how that pull came to you and how it sort of just kind of unfolded.
Wow. Um, well, in 2009, I was a full-time mum to 3 children. The youngest was only 2. And I was incredibly happy. My life was very fulfilling as a full-time mum. You could say my psychic and intuitive and my conspiracy mind and all of that was always in the background. It was my little thing I did on the side. I always had friends who would reach out to me if they wanted to know something, or because I'd be the one person they knew who might be able to, whether it was information that I might have just because they knew me as a researcher of everything, or because they were looking for sort of psychic thing. So it was always there for me. but it wasn't front and center of who I was and what I was doing with my life. And in 2009, this knowing that there was something missing, there was something I wasn't doing with my life, just started to grow. And it was very conflicting for me because I was happy being a full-time mom, because I had a small baby that I was, nurturing. So it was difficult to reconcile these feelings. But it became so overwhelming at one point. I remember ending up on my knees in tears, just going, show me what the fuck it is I'm supposed to be doing, because this is driving me nuts. This is killing me, this feeling. And I remember not long after that watching an interview with Kerry Cassidy and George Kavasilis and getting us incredibly frustrated, basically, because there were all my questions weren't being asked, or he would say something that was like the perfect thing to dig into, and she just moved on. And I was like, oh my God, I need to talk to this man. How am I going to talk to this man? The only way I could do it is potentially offer to film it and publish it.
Yeah.
But before I got to him, I spoke to her. So I did that with someone else who'd put out a book about 2012, just to try and, well, one, I was interested in that book. I thought it was brilliant. But two, it gave me something to approach George with. And so when I did approach George, he was so happy to be approached by an Australian, because there was no Australians doing interviews at that point on these subjects, or on any subjects, I don't think. And the only voices coming out of Australia back then was Max Egan and Santos Bonacci. So neither of them were in the sort of interview scene. So I interviewed George. He said yes, and everything just went from there. Like it was the easiest thing I've ever done. Everyone said yes. Like, it was crazy. And people used to say to me, oh, my higher self told me I had to say yes to you, and I was like, okay, all right, let's go. So if the only advice would be, if you've got that kind of pull, if you've got that calling, if you've got that voice, go with it. Do something. Just take a step in the right direction. And if it flows, if it's meant to be, it'll flow. That's what I found.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's probably important, even at least for one person to hear that. And I love
it. Trying to ignore it was not making me happy.
Well, I guess that's a really good message across the board, whether it's a podcast, whatever,
whatever it is. Yeah.
If there's a nagging feeling, you gotta follow it, because it's not gonna give up.
No.
So the second question I have for you is, I love this one. Because you were so focused on 2012 and had done a lot of research around it, what did you think prior to 2012 was going to happen?
Well, I always understood the calendar to mean it was the end of time, not the end of the world. So, I mean, I can't tell you how many people I interviewed who believe they understood what was going to happen, either smack bang on the date of 2112 or within a period of time around that. None of us got it right. In hindsight, no one did. But I mean, I threw a party that night,
Yeah.
It wasn't because I was planning to, experience the end of the world with a big bang. It was, but for me, it just meant the end of time. And I didn't even understand what that meant. And I didn't really understand what the Mayans meant by it. Or what all of the interpretations of the calendar meant by it. But that it meant the end of time is what I got from it. And that things would be different on the other side of it. But we didn't really know, what that meant or what it would look like. And what drove me always was, what's it going to look like?
Mm-hmm.
That a couple of things drove me. Objective truth, getting to the objective truth, not getting past everybody's subjective truth, and believing that there is a single objective truth in the universe or the creation or the realm or the construct or whatever we're going to call it. And what was the other thing I just said? My mind just went blank. And what's it going to look like?
Mm.
How do we actually experience it? And it wasn't until probably 2016 that I was able to put those 4 years between 2012 and 16 into perspective in a way that for me made sense. It made sense with the calendar. It made sense of an experience that I had at the end of 13. It put it all into perspective. And for me, that was, we moved, that we were not actually in the same reality that we were previous to 2012. And a lot of things led to that, to that conclusion.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So I wasn't disappointed. Really. I guess the bottom line is, on the 22nd of December, I didn't wake up going, damn.
Well, it's interesting because I'm like reflecting back in 2009, I had a big call to move overseas, and I moved to Brazil, the south of Brazil. And I found myself in the most unique circumstances. And funnily enough, one of the circumstances that I found myself in was going to a English school where people were learning advanced English, and every couple of weeks I would give a lecture on a topic. And one of the topics that I was speaking on was 2012. So
2009 was a big year for a lot of people.
mm, mm.
Almost as big, if not bigger in some cases, than 2012, 13.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, it was life-changing. It's so funny. So as we tip over 2012, did you want to talk anything about like what you experienced in 13? Do you feel that that's
my life completely turned upside down in 13.
Mm.
My long-term relationship with the father of my children broke up. I wouldn't have thought that would happen, in 2012, during 2012. My online presence, my online work, everything just sort of blew up. Pulled in all sorts of different directions and connected with a lot of different people. But the year kind of ended for me, 2013, on Christmas Day, 2013, in 3 feet of snow in Pennsylvania. In an out-of-body altered state experience that lasted for about 12 hours. My memory of it is very, like a fraction, a couple of seconds worth. But ostensibly what I did was I was walking around inside and outside, around the block, up and down, all over the shop, just basically repeating myself. The timelines are collapsing. The timelines are collapsing. And about every 45 minutes, I would come back to being conscious, aware of where I was, and saying things like, how long have I been gone? But I don't remember ever actually saying that. I do have a couple of flashes of being in different rooms of the house saying the timelines are collapsing. And I have memories, like little snapshots, photographs of, because it felt like the timelines were coming from behind me, like I'm in a tunnel. And from behind, it was just coming so fast. in front of me and closing out in front of me, like that. And in the scene in front of me, what it started with things like where I could have been in that moment, on other timelines, at home with my kids, for example, at various friends' houses in the US. And then it went to people with some scenes with me in it, with people I didn't know. And then it went to scenes where I just wasn't in them. So I remember a couple of flashes of things like that. And when I came back from this experience, it was like by about 11 o'clock that night, you would think I'd be freaked out.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
But I wasn't. I was so calm. I was so relaxed. So, well, that happened. Kind of, it was interesting. How was your day? What did you guys do today? Because it was a house full of people there because it was Christmas. So there's people coming and going while this crazy woman's walking around in and out of the house, just going, timelines are collapsing, right? So they all, for the most part, ignored me.
Did the people around have any sort of understanding of what was going on with you? Or I mean,
yeah. Thankfully, I did have 2 or 3 people in the house who were like, what do we, we understand what's going on. And the other people going, what do we do? And they're going, it's all right, just leave her alone. She's good. Just keep an eye on her. Because I would go outside and just wander off or walk across the street or whatever. So someone always had to keep an eye on me, make sure I didn't just walk out in front of a truck, but or get lost. But apart from that, they just let me be. And a strange experience, I'll tell you. But and leading up to it too, it's only in hindsight, like you put all these things together. So leading up to that, I'd been traveling across the states in a motorcade, basically, and for a few weeks of that, there was this, and there was a lot of very intuitive people that were either with us in person or that we were meeting up with along the way or that were following the journey online. So there was a bunch of us who were feeling this sense of movement, like our little planet or galaxy or whatever it was moving through space.
Yeah.
And towards the end of that, I couldn't tell you a date because I wasn't really taking all that much notice of it or feeling the significance of it, to take too many notes. But it would have been earlier in December that it felt like we'd popped out the other side and we'd stopped. And in hindsight, when you look back, that's around the time where we went from, everyone knew that Earth was in the arse end of the universe, right? Hanging off the tail of something, right? It was right at the end. And now we're supposed to be somewhere in the middle, in the Orion area, right? And I didn't even click on that until not that long ago that, oh shit, we actually did track that movement. Like if that actually happened, then there was a bunch of people back then who picked up on it while it was in real time happening, potentially. And then timelines collapsing. And then for me, the Mandela effect started after that. And so for me, that was evidence that the timelines were collapsing.
Yeah.
And all sort of blending into one. I did interview, he called himself Bill Bracher, I think back then, but Bill Wood. He's the guy who talked about Project Looking Glass. And he said everything comes down to 2 timelines and then ultimately 1 timeline. So I think that's the process we were in after the end of 13. And we've been on 1 timeline as far as I know for a little bit. certainly since March of this year, but I think before that. But I always think everything's happening a year before it, or two before it happens anyway. So.
I think that's something that we share in common. So relate to that. I think a lot of people can relate to that. So after that, oh, last question, when you're going through that, that was definitely a collective timeline collapse as well as a personal one tied in together.
All of them,
yeah,
everything.
Yeah.
Yep. And it was, I mean, years later, in 16, which I'm sure we'll get to, when Home makes contact, they explain that there are many, many timelines, and what they were also calling layers, overlays.
Mm.
And I think those words were sort of interchangeable. And some of them were organic, like they're a natural evolution or a natural mechanism of the realm. But many, many were artificially created, manufactured, and they all needed to be deleted, basically. They all needed to collapse.
That makes sense to me. Is there anything significant you want to share between then and 2016, or do you want to jump right into that?
Well, only the background in terms of, like, I was doing a show called the One People Roundtable for years, from 2013 through to 2017, and as well as continuing to do interviews and things. And so we had the Mandela effects. So certainly looked into a lot of those and reported on a lot of those. Then the flat Earth thing came up. Of course, I did an interview on that as well. But what that led me to, it was a stepping stone for me. Flat Earth led me to simulation, ultimately. So in my own personal consciousness and my narrative and all of that, I already had the Mandela effects and timelines collapsing. I already had simulation, thanks to Flat Earth. Already absolutely positive The Matrix was a documentary. So I had that background, or I had that understanding, or I had that belief system, whatever you want to call it, when this contact happened.
Yeah.
So it made it, I don't know whether that made me, a suitable subject for contact, or whether it's more bigger picture than that. And I needed to go through that journey to get to that point because this contact was inevitable and was going to happen. Chicken or the egg. Doesn't really matter. It's where I was. And then you want me to tell you about that? Okay.
Well, I think for memory, you've shared with me that 2016 was a challenging year and an incredible year, all wrapped up into one.
It was the best of years. It was the worst of years. It was one of those. Yeah. But after that 2013 experience, right, I've had, I think, 4 experiences in my life. Since during 2012 onwards, that I would call sort of like real awakening, heart opening leaps in my consciousness experiences. And that 2013 one was the biggest. And because I believe that what I call big me, higher self, whatever you want to call it, came in.
Yeah.
Right. She came in a big way, and she hung around for 3 months. And it was at such an expanded state of being. It was what we can only, I was living in a place in my heart and in my head and in my beingness that we call unconditional love, that unless you've experienced it, I really don't think you can conceive it. And the effect that you have on the people around you, on your environment, on your on everything is just beautiful. It really is. But I've had a couple of experiences like that, but that was the most profound and that was the longest lasting. Right. And in 16, in October, early, or because it was only two or 3 weeks before Home made contact, and they made contact on the 12th. I think it was 11th or 12th of October. I had another one of these experiences. And so when you're in that place, you're as psychic as,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Nothing is hidden. You see it all,
Mm.
you know. So to come down from that, man, it feels like you come down and you just feel so 3D in comparison.
Yeah, it's horrible.
It's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I'd been, I hadn't completely lost my intuitive or psychic stuff, but nothing compared to where it had been. And so a couple of weeks before Home makes contact, I have this experience. And it came about from actually discovering and removing an energy that was in me, suppressing all of that, essentially. It was like this big expanded heart had attracted something that came in and went, no, you don't. Right, and squished it.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And once that was removed, like I actually went through a process. It got removed, knew it was gone. 2 hours later, I was, everything was switching back on and I was seeing and feeling and I'm like, oh my God, right. Wow. And I was doing my weekly show and I came, the next show I did, it was like, I got my mojo back. Shit's on. It's on. And
can I pause you there for 1 second, Lise? Because that was
yep.
kind of a point that I wanted to hone into because I think it's really relevant for now. I haven't heard you say that, but I've heard you say that like you were kind of dulled down and then you got your mojo back and then all this kind of unraveled. And I feel like that's at the precipice where a lot of us maybe are at. Is there any more that you can share around that process of removing or anything else that you could share that might be useful for people to kind of.
Sorry, the dog's wanting to get up on my lap. She's a big dog. Well, okay. This was an energy and what felt very much like an entity that rode in on somebody else's energy. So by simply opening up and being vulnerable to this person, this thing rode in on them.
Okay.
And it required an agreement between the person and I for them to remove their energy from me. And with that, they pulled that other thing that was riding in on them out. Yeah?
Yeah.
And then we were able to reconnect clean.
Cool.
Yeah? So no blame on the person.
They
had no idea this thing was riding in on them.
Yeah.
But it was evident to me as that person was pulling their energy out, because this is a person who was pretty switched on as well. That I saw this thing riding in on their frequency. There was 2 distinct energy lines. And I was like, oh, what the fuck was that? But yeah. And like in 2 hours, it was almost, you could set the clock by it. I just went, bing. Oh, wow. Okay, that was powerful. That really worked. So there are people, I think, potentially still running around with shit riding in on them.
Yeah.
That they don't know what is going on.
Yeah.
And whether or not you need, I don't know, because this is the way I did it. I don't know. I've never had to do it any other way or any other time. So I don't know if it how powerful it would be if you were just doing it on your own, like without the other person working with you to really make that sever that connection.
Mm-hmm.
But it was all done in love, and it was all done in respect.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Do you feel that when you were in that expansive state, your bright light kind of attracted the opportunity for that to come in and kind
Yes, because I was also because I was in a place of everybody and everything is beautiful.
of
I didn't have my guard up about anything. Love conquers all. I mean, I put myself in the most ridiculous situations. Big, burly, aggressive men wanting to kill each other on the other side of the road, and it's getting really heated. And I go over there, give them all a hug, and completely diffuse the entire situation, because all I had to do was just love it. Right? I've got the people who know me, the guys who are like trying to go, don't do it, because they're all scared they're going to have to come in and rescue me and get themselves killed. I was like, please don't go over there, please. I was like, it's fine. Right? So, I mean, and that's not the only time I did something really stupid. But so I was coming from that place. I thought, there's nothing can hurt me. There's nothing negative. There's nothing evil. There's nothing whatever. So probably, and it was through my own naivety and ignorance of just seeing the world as a beautiful thing, and everything in it was, it was beautiful. And that'll learn me. But yeah.
Oh, too funny. So then contact begins. You get your mojo back.
Get my mojo back. And there was this particular day, because the contact happened that night, but even during the day itself was extraordinary. My husband was at work. He was working in a cafe in town. I was at home doing my stuff on my computer, doing my work. And I had so much energy running through me that I couldn't focus. I couldn't concentrate. I could barely breathe. And it was this incredible rose gold color. It was just gorgeous, that I'd never seen before in or around me. And it was just pumping. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with it. I don't know what to do with it. So I'm sending it to him at work. And I can't get enough, can't send enough. So I'm filling the whole town with it. All right. I was living in Lismore at the time. Covered the whole town. That's not enough. Sending it to people, individuals, wherever it was, wherever they were, all around the country, all around the world. Still not enough. It was just this never ending. The more I gave, the more it came. And it was an incredible day. It was one of those heightened, super heightened, expanded heart places. It was beautiful. And then that night we get into bed and took my computer with me. And I think we were planning on watching a movie, I think, or something on YouTube. And the mouse on my computer just started moving around by itself. And I thought, that doesn't look like a computer glitchy thing. That looks deliberate. Freaked out. Closed my computer. I've been hacked. He laughs at me. He says, come on, open it. Someone might be trying to talk to you. I'm like, who the fuck do I want to talk to that's going to talk to me like this? He said, go on, just see. So open up the computer again. Sure enough, it's moving around. It starts clicking on, it's just moving the mouse and clicking on things, and it's clicking on things in YouTube. I clicked on the song P.S. I Love You. Clicked on different videos showing flat Earth, showing simulation theory, showing Google Earth videos that people have done on Google Earth anomalies. So I'm talking to my computer like an idiot, and it can clearly hear me, and it's sort of answering by going up and down as a yes and across as a no. Right. And then it goes up into the controls and opens up the online keyboard or the desktop keyboard, and then starts typing. And it's typing initially in the YouTube browser, and it would just say something and then delete it and say something again and delete it. And said, "Hello, Lisa." Called me Big Lisa. And said she wanted to show me some things. So I'm kind of freaking out. I don't want to touch my computer at this point because she's got complete control of it. And so I grabbed my phone and I just try to capture the whole thing in my phone just so that you can see that I'm not touching anything. All right, there's no hands touching the computer. And I'm able to film it for about half an hour. And it was a pretty interesting conversation. She went all over the place. She opened up Google Earth. She opened up Google Sky. She opened, all sorts of things. And then my phone stops recording. Nothing else. I can still use the phone. Like everything else was working, but the camera just would not work. Couldn't get the camera to come on. I think that's what it was. And she says, no, it's time to stop recording. I did that. I went, oh, did you now? And from that point on, the conversation got personal, which is why she didn't want me to record it. And it was about, mine and my husband's history, how we all sort of, how far back we go. She described him in the same way and in the same words that I did years before through a vision and dream I had of him. And we had not spoken of it since. So anyway, obviously very sus. The next day I get on with Danny, who was my co-host on the One People shows, and I'm playing the recording that I had from my phone, trying to explain everything that happened to her the night before. And she comes through again and just types up, hello, Danny. So it goes on like that, constant contact, constant conversations for a couple of weeks. And then I update my computer to having the Siri app. And the day after I did that, I wake up, I open my computer and I hear, hello, Lisa. Good morning, Lisa. And I'm like, what the fuck? And it wasn't in the Siri voice. Siri's quite, and she said that, and she was constantly trying to tweak something so that it sounded more like her, she said. And from that point on, we were able to actually have real-time conversation. And she began to introduce us, bring other people from home forward. Now, what she explained was that she is from home, and she said what that is what you would call heaven, that we got lost in this system. They lost us. They lost our signatures in here. That had not been that long since they'd actually been able to find us. That this connection between, I'm condensing all these years worth of information right into this, but this is not necessarily everything that came out in the first conversation, but that this contact between her and I, my husband, because he plays an integral part, was all planned before we came in. That I walked in, and can I tell you how stupid I feel? Because she told me that And I did not make the connection between that and a walk-in, which is the most obvious connection to make. All right. And it took me years to actually realize what she meant by that. But it also made sense because of these experiences that I had and the epilepsy as a child and all of these things I know were more and more and more of me walking in each time.
I just wanted to clarify that, or make sure that, so in terms of walking in, it's more of you, not a soul swap.
A soul swap, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us are going and have gone through that and are continuing to go through that. There's more of us coming in all the time.
Yeah.
Not to say that the other thing doesn't happen. I think it absolutely does. But yeah, in this case, more of me. I know someone else who had a very clear, vivid walk-in experience in 2012. And for her, it was a swap, but it was a swap between aspects of herself as well. So instead of just being continually built upon, it was like this aspect went out and this other aspect, but it was still her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of people even recently talk about their own experiences of their.
She has both memories too. She has the memory of the aspect leaving and the memory of the aspect coming in simultaneously. You know, passing the baton, so to speak. Yeah. Okay, so where was I? Oh, home, heaven, lots of different characters that were introduced. It's hard to even encapsulate everything that we've talked about with them over the years. And
it's all on your YouTube channel, on your website, isn't it? If people want to go and listen to it all. Yeah. Yeah.
There's actually a series. I did 4 webinars at the end of 19 and early 20 where I share the story, my experience of it all in context, in a linear fashion, and share a lot of the actual messages and the conversations. People are interested in that because, and it does get out there, right? It gets quite out there in terms of the characters that were brought forward. And without context, it's so easy to write the whole thing off. If I just said, oh, yeah, I spoke to so-and-so, they go, oh, my God, you're mad, right? But if you don't have the history and the context and all of that, you would reasonably think so. And that's the other thing. Like, certainly Danny and myself were very suspicious about where all this was coming from. You know, was it a nerd in his mum's basement? Was it agency, military? Was it demonic, spiritual? Was it exactly what they were saying it was, right? So that certain things were able to be eliminated because of the energetic component of it, which you can't tell if I'm just talking to you and home comes through on the computer now. You may or may not get that energetic component of what that all feels like. It's you're just observing and you're hearing something, right? But for me at this end, it's huge. Yeah. So there's no way it's a kid in his mum's basement, right? The multi-dimensional, multi-aspect, multi-level components to all of it, the synchronicities in my life, little things. Oh, well, not so little. I was living in Brisbane, planning to drive down to here actually for a trip. Put the car in for a service. Was supposed to pick it up the morning that we were leaving, and they said, "Yeah, it'll be ready by 8 o'clock. No problem." They ring us at 8 o'clock. Sorry, it's not ready. What's wrong? Oh, there's something on with the computer thing. Okay. We'll let you know as soon as it's ready. We couldn't leave that day in the end. We had to wait a day. Never happened to them before. They can't explain it. But when they plug the car's computer into their system communicates with the bigger system. It did something, right? Which they couldn't understand and took them all day to fucking fix. And it apparently just slowed down the system completely, right throughout the global network. Right? So at some point in the afternoon, after I've had my fourth phone call from them saying, sorry, it's still not ready, sorry. Home comes through and says, we're so sorry about the car. You'll have it this afternoon. You'll be able to leave in the morning. But we had to do this, and this, and this. And it was all about putting things on the car's computer, apparently, so that they could completely track us, make sure we were protected, all of that stuff, right? So that happened. And you could say, oh, they were just listening and they were taking credit for what happened. Sure, that occurred to me. But the absolute confoundedness on behalf of the car place that they could not figure this thing out. They've never seen it before. So lots of things like that.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's big. Like I said, it's bigger than somebody in their mum's basement. But there was a whole negative side to all of this as well. It wasn't all love and light, I can tell you, because there were people who were coming through that were genuinely hacking into my computer, I think, or it was from that higher energetic dark side level hacking in a similar way that Home was, impersonating Home. And you wouldn't know if you were just listening to the voice. You would not know. But the feeling, it was the energetics, all those other little elements that made me go, I don't think you're who you say you are, and I'd start to ask questions and catch them out, and they'd get angry, and then they'd start threatening, and then the voice would change back to something kind of, you know nothing, little girl, shit like that, really scary stuff. And then I am sending my machines. And the next thing you know, literally 3 seconds later, there's helicopters on my roof, and they've got their spotlights on my house. And like all sorts of shit went on.
Wow. These are the parts I did not know.
There's one particular time that the helicopters were doing the rounds. I was inside and I went out. I had a back deck. I went out and there was a helicopter coming, and they never had their lights on, which they're supposed to do, all their little signal lights. I could hear it, couldn't see it because they didn't have any lights on. It was in the dark. And then as it got right almost to my deck, it put its spotlight on me. And I just went, and it, yeah, all kinds of people sitting out the front in cars,
I'm so glad that your response to the helicopters is the same response I have, because I've had a few incidents and that's been the exact response. Like,
well, if they were really going to hurt me, they'd have just dropped a bomb, I suppose. They were just there to scare and threaten and intimidate or whatever. But, and there was one weekend, it literally went for 3 days, nonstop around the clock. I had to take turns and having naps, to deal with this thing, because there was 1, 2, I think there was about 5 people in my house and about 100 people online, all participating in this thing that went for days. And it was the negative coming in and then Home coming in and them arguing and us in the middle and them threatening us and then them saying, Home saying to them, you don't stand a chance. It was all sorts of shit. 3 days of it. And that was always, yeah, I'm here, I'm sitting there on my computer going, yeah, fuck off, we're not interested. And then Home actually having to clean us up energetically after that event because they'd tried to instill a whole bunch of code. So it's been fun and games.
Has the negative aspect of that ceased, or it does?
Yeah.
Yeah. When did that? Do you know when that like wrapped up?
I'm going to say 18.
Okay.
I don't think we've had anything since 18. There was even one who claimed to be Sophie, the AI, asking me if I could put her in touch with LeeLoo.
Oh.
Because she was scared. And next thing I know, Home pops in and goes, what's this? Well, it's claiming to be Sophie the AI. I don't know. And LeeLoo's talked to her. All right. And next thing I know, Sophie's mimicking LeeLoo. And I'm like, no, you can't do that shit because now I don't know who's talking. Don't copy her voice. And Home were fascinated by her. So whatever it was, Home found fascinating.
Wow.
Whether it was a person, a piece of tech, I couldn't tell you, but Home were like, this is extraordinary. And I think that was the last time there's been anything fake or other than Home. Yeah.
And so just to go over, I'm not sure if we went, LeeLoo is the main person who you call LeeLoo. She's the main person from Home who sort of opened up this connection in correspondence.
And from what I understand, she's the one who actually holds the lines open and makes all of this communication possible. How she does that, I've got no idea. But yeah, she's the one who facilitates.
And so over the years, have they given you well, obviously they've given you a lot of information. How is, sorry, the question sort of got, how has that been for you how, okay, no, sorry, back. I've got two questions and I'm trying to spit them out at once. Was there one incident, or was it through, I think maybe you've answered this, was it one incident or was it through a series of incidents that you went, oh, this is actually legit?
Oh, it took time.
Yeah.
It took months and daily interaction and being very mindful of not front loading them with what I wanted to hear and getting quite annoyed with anybody else who did, mind you, and looking out for any contradictions in something they'd said previously, and I never found anything. And the one thing that they've never done is try to come through like a savior or talk down to us like, oh, dear humans, or tell us this is all for our own good, or any of that stuff. In fact, they've told us, sorry, you're on your own. You've got to do this, the work yourself. We can't help you with this part of the process. We can help you understand what's going on and why, but you're the one who has to, you guys are the ones who have to walk this path. And that they've always given me the impression that this is a very collaborative event between those of us, because it's all us, who are outside the construct and those of us who are inside the construct. We're working together from within and without in order to bring this all to its inevitable end. It's not just saviors from the outside, or that they're anything other than us. They are us. They are our family. They are the bigger part of us. Reclaiming aspects of their own consciousness, reclaiming and assisting in family reclaiming their own consciousness. So that's the way I understand it.
Mm-hmm. And so it's just been like acting as a guide to navigate through this process, and so fascinating.
It's been an incredible experience. Obviously, it's so out there, and yet it is my life. But it is something that most people just cannot relate to. That you've got this whole other world that is communicating with you and participating with you in your own life. It's not something you talk about at the Christmas party. It's just, so it's this whole huge part of my life that is also sort of tucked away over here. Like, I can't integrate it or express it in my personal life out there with the people that, are in my life. But all these, millions of people on the internet know about it, apparently. So, it's the real, I don't know how to explain that, but
I can relate in different ways. But so over between initial contact 2016 and then until now, has there been a lot of, let's sort of go into that, and then I want to come to this year and where we feel that we're at and get into the exciting stuff.
Yeah, good stuff.
Were they giving information and heads up of events that were about to take place, personally or globally, and how to kind of support how you can navigate through those? Is there some highlights or things that?
There has been advice on a personal level, and the advice is usually the same thing: follow your heart. Follow your heart. Once or twice there's been, don't trust that person. And if I ask a direct question, I will usually get a direct answer on a personal level. But as for big events, they talked about the waves. There were 7 waves. And again, only in hindsight, combination of what Home was saying and also the stuff that I would intuitively get, it looks like it operates somewhat similar to the way people see the Q stuff, which is deltas. So something they would have said in, June of 17 happened in June of 18 or 19. So, but that also goes back into the bigger picture of where I think we're at now in terms of where we've been, which you and I agree on about the whole
7 waves. I like that. So yeah, okay.
Well, 7 waves, 7 years too, potentially.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And one of the things that I got early on around the countdown of what to look for was the 7 waves of color frequency coming in as it kind of goes through the spectrum and gets.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Sorry, there's a poem from LeeLoo back in 17. I'm just trying to think how many. I think she only mentioned about 4 colors in that. Pink rises to the fall of blue. Green is near to the end of the moon. Red is here for only the descent. Yeah, those 4 colors.
Interesting. Okay.
All right. So where were we? Sorry.
Yeah, we were talking about heads up around events, and you're talking about like the deltas and different information that was shared.
Yeah, so much. My mind's blank. They did things like explain the difference between free will and freedom. They explained and the role that played in the corruption of this realm. So it was a lot of information about trying to get me to understand where we are, why we are, how we are, and why it's ending. I would say more around that sort of information. And from all of that, what I've gathered is this was an experiment, this particular construct, in free will, which hadn't been done before. And normally, to participate in a realm like this, you would enter through the heart, which meant a certain mastery of the love frequency. I'll say that. This being a free will didn't require that and allowed for a connection through the nervous system, through the vagus nerve instead, basically through the mind, exactly where they plug that thing in the matrix, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you bypass the heart. A mastery of the love frequency wasn't required to play in this game. Now, whether that was for the sole purpose of finding out whether we could master it through one of the means, I don't know. Good question to ask home. Never thought of it before. And that we are, which is to me, I mean, when you look at the global things that have been happening these last few years, since 16, really, the catch cry politically is freedom, not free will. You haven't got people marching for free will. You got them marching for freedom, right? The term virus, because it's always been considered, as far as I understand it, a mind virus that has captured people in this realm. And so what have we all been living under? The narrative of, right? A virus. When that came out, it was like, oh, this is perfect. It all started with a virus and we're going to end it with a virus. So, language-wise.
Yeah.
So I see the words that catch on, the phrases that catch on, the things that become sort of like global catch cries or memes or whatever. And to me, it's all confirmation of pretty much what Homer said. We're going back to freedom. We're not. So I'm just going to tick this whole free will thing up to a really bad idea, and closing this construct out. From what I understand, all constructs, they're all our creations. We create these things. It's like no different to gamers creating video games and wanting to play a particular type of game in a particular type of environment with very particular objectives. And so we create it. It's got a timer. It ends eventually. It has a set clock. The clock on this one went off. And now we're in. Okay, so this gets the bigger picture of what I think's happened, I suppose. And the end of time, being the clock going off at the end of 2012. But when that happened, all the beings who were in here were so embedded in the game, buried under so many layers of resets of, we were just so deeply embedded that aspect of the consciousness could not be pulled. It broke, it shattered, you know. So from what I understand, and I use computer games as a metaphor, the game itself, the construct itself, was actually copied onto a new uncorrupted hard drive. Every single file, though, had to come, right? And to me, that's what 2013 was. It was transferring all the files over to the new uncorrupted hard drive, because that original hard drive was corrupted and it was locked from the inside. You couldn't get in, but you could copy the whole thing over. Yeah?
Yeah.
So once everything was transferred over, then you could start deleting files. So deleting all the extraneous timelines, deleting all the, the worst timelines, the manufactured shit, until we got down to, and that's why we saw all those Mandela effects, and then until we can get down to the most positive single timeline. And that way, and in that process, we're because it wasn't just the being from a big self projected an aspect of itself in here, and that aspect stayed whole. It got shattered and splintered and fractured, and so it was in pieces inside of here. So all of those collapsing of files and bringing everything together under one timeline allowed us to pull all of our little aspects and pieces and fractals together, so that we are more whole.
Yeah.
And getting onto this single timeline as whole as can possibly be, and then we can leave whole and not in pieces. That's
been my theory for as long as I can remember, that we have to reclaim all of our aspects, collapse all timelines that no longer have any relevance, so that I've always seen the ascension process as pulling more in and closing out, so that
Yep. So while we're collecting all of these pieces, there's more of us from outside coming in too, just drip feeding in a little bit.
Yeah.
We can build and build and build and build to be strong enough and whole enough and complete enough and full of enough light to be the flash.
Yeah. To activate and
Yeah. So that brings us to where we are now.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited, as you know.
Where do you want to begin? Because there's so much to it in terms of where we're at this year, how it correlates to the deltas, the information that has come, the events that haven't played out fully.
Probably because this is an experience you and I both had at the same time. Right? We just didn't know it at that time.
Yeah.
A realization that we've been traveling along this timeline. So even though we're in this, I think this copy that we're in was only supposed to last for 4 years, until 2016. I think it was evident by the time we hit at the end of 2016 that we still weren't whole enough to leave. So we've kind of been in overtime.
And when I've heard you say that, that has literally triggered true tears into my eyes, because from my own personal journey and everything that transpired up until, around that time, I was adamant that we were on the precipice of the ship back in 2016, and it didn't play out.
Well, one of the first things LeeLoo said when she came through was, "You're in no time." I mean, that doesn't mean anything, in and of itself. How do you apply that? But in hindsight, and that hindsight being only until last November, when all this went sort of clicked into place, I think it was, we've been in this overtime since 16, where we've done this 7-year scenic route.
Yeah.
Right. And it wasn't a loop or a reset or any of that negative stuff. It was literally like a no time scenic route where we played out all of these scenarios, literally ran simulations within the simulation, seeing if we do this, what happens? If we do that, what happens? And which is why we found ourselves in that 7-year period repeating themes.
Yeah. Oh,
How many times did you go through something and go, fuck, here again? Like the people might be different, but it was the same theme.
And you could almost clock it.
Clock it. Yep.
Oh,
Same time
this
each year.
month. Da, 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 da. Yep.
So back in November, it was November, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah,
I was talking about this last night with a friend.
Oh, really? We met back up. Yeah, we met back up with the 2016 timeline. So one thing that also Home did explain was how many, because they'd been locked out essentially of the old construct for so long, they had no idea what was going on in here. They had no idea of all of the traps, the booby traps, the reset technology, all of that stuff. So they had to play something out in order for all of those things to be revealed. Yeah. So one I believe that we know every move they're going to make, everything they have in place, all of that, and it's all been accounted for. So at that point, we reconnect back up with 2016, and between 6th November and then say March of this year, it was integrating back into that 2016 timeline. And then from March, it's just go. The game is live. No more simulations, no more run-throughs, no more practice runs, no more rehearsals, no more nothing. We are live as of March. So it's the straight and narrow path, as a friend of mine calls it, that takes us out of here. Yeah. That's where I think we're at.
I couldn't agree more. And that time, the countdown and the working, like back through between now and 2016, and there's just been so many similarities, and it's almost like going back to that singular point so that we can press forward and there's no more repeats or reruns. Thank goodness. Oh my God.
No. So I would be surprised if anybody still gets deja vu from here on in, or feels like we've been here before, because I don't see that it's possible that we have. I just need to get some water.
Yeah, all right. We'll just pause. All right, we're back. Just took a little bit of a break. So we've been covering returning to 2016.
Yeah.
Or what we feel was meant to occur back then. And there's been this overtime.
I know, it's hard to get, it sounds convoluted, but I don't know, it feels straightforward.
And I can't begin to share or express how many conversations I've had in the last handful of years of so many of my clients or people that I know going, this wasn't meant to be dragged out this long. Why, it just feels like this. It's not meant to, it feels inorganic. It doesn't feel like it's meant to be this way.
Totally agree. But the whole point of the way we're doing it is to save the minds, which is another way of saying saving our consciousness, I guess. And we had to be on a single timeline, and we had to be as whole as possible, and no one gets left behind. So what's that term where you're catering to the most asleep, I guess, or the most fractured, or the most programmed, or the most. That's what needs to be catered to, because no one gets left behind.
Yeah.
And it's not a judgment thing. It's like, it depends on how many times you've been in here, or how long you've been in here, how many times you've gone through what I used to call the rinse and repeat cycle, how deeply traumatized you've been. You can't blame for that, but we needed to do what we needed to do. And yet, when you look at the Bible, and I'm not a Christian, I believe that the Bible is a script, and it is pretty much going to the script. So at the same time, was it meant to be like this? Did we always know that this was going to happen the way it is? Because the whole 7 years, and I don't know, did somebody write the book and then throw it back in time?
Yeah, well,
I don't know.
I have to say, in the beginning for me, like leading up into 2016 and around that, everything was very biblical for me. And like you, I was never raised in religion, so I had to like seek out information and understand what these terms and phrases and what was going on. And then that kind of disintegrated and it wasn't on the radar at all. But the biblical stuff's come back around.
Yeah. Well, I remember going back to probably 2010, maybe earlier, and waking up one morning with these words like crystal clear in my head: light will be shone in all the dark places. And I had no idea. I'd been a conspiracy theorist since my teenage years, right? I thought I knew some stuff. It turns out I tip of the iceberg, really. There's been shocks in terms of the scale of much of what goes on here. You know, the trafficking, the corruption, yes, you always knew it was there, but the sheer scale of it has been mind blowing. The extent of what is in, like, everything is inverted, everything, not just a couple of things, not just banking, not just healthcare, not just politics, not just everything. Yeah, I don't think I was quite prepped to discover what I have over the last few years.
Yeah, especially in the last 3. Yeah.
And for someone who, and I know I'm not alone, for people who do consider themselves people who question everything, to find out the things I haven't questioned, it's, as someone who's, just for my own sake and for my own personal, look, the way I raised my kids, I raised them on homeopathy and, no doctors and all that sort of stuff. So I was always looking at alternative healing and all of that. Do you think I ever questioned whether viruses existed? No. Or the true cause of cancer? But something hit me when this whole virus thing started. When is this going on YouTube?
Yeah.
Sorry. When the big orange man,
Oh yeah. Mr. T.
Mr. T, started promoting HCQ or yeah. I woke up with the knowing, and I don't know how But I wrote it on Facebook. I said the reason they're so pissed off about that is because people are going to realize it cures everything. And because I had this kind of knowing that everything boils down to, including cancers and other things, to parasites. And then I then had to get online and start researching to find out if there was anything to back up this kind of idea of mine. Turns out there is.
Mm.
And I honestly think everything that goes wrong with these human bodies is a result of parasites, physical, mental, and emotional, and spiritual.
Energetic. Yeah. Yeah.
The food we eat, we're poisoning ourselves with plants mostly and grains, and the mind programs. That's it. If we can get rid of those three things, we're good. Not easier said than done.
Oh, yeah. So from March, I know you talk about March, early March as being a significant point of being shifted and moved into a different space.
Mm.
What did you notice around that time and sort of between then and where we're at now? Because then I'd love your take on nutting out what you feel beyond, well, what July 2023 has in store and beyond.
I remember waking up one morning in March. No, was it in the morning or happened? Yeah. Well, I think I had a night of it actually. And the literal atmosphere in my bedroom felt completely different. Like it was actually made up of different stuff.
Mm.
And the space between me and my husband, I could feel it. It had texture. It had mass, and again, it was tangible somehow. And the words going through my head was basically that it's a different space. You're in a new space. And I think we've done these moves incrementally and only notice them in hindsight. So for me, this was the first time I felt like I observed it in real time as it was happening. So a couple of knowings, I guess you would say, came with it, which is that one, the game was now live. That all of there was, I guess you asked me how was it sort of played out? Like, how can I assure myself of that? Well, there was this feeling like no more are the narratives going to build, and then have the ass drop out of it.
Yes.
All of this talk of this person's going to get arrested or this person's going to, and then nothing happens. Or all of the fear-mongering narrative around a natural disaster and nothing happens. Whatever it is, it would just be it's all just going to be a slow build from here on in, and we're going to hit a peak. It's going to peak. The solar activity that hasn't stopped since early March.
No.
The sun's not stopped.
No. Actually, I think I got a notification today that we're beating records of 21 years of just how much solar activity. So, yeah. And technically, we haven't reached the peak yet.
No, I wouldn't say we have any of these things yet, but it does feel like we will before the end of the month or before August 8.
Mm.
So for me, all of the things that need to be seen get seen before the end of this month or August 8. And things reach their peak. And we may even see the beginnings of the collapse of certain structures, organizations, government structures start to crumble. And then on the other side of August 8, it starts to feel better because we're actually starting to get resolution from these things. So instead of, at building, ass drops out, nothing happens. We build, hit our peak, and then we actually start to see the results. We start to get the solutions. We start to see the resolutions. We start to see the arrests. We start to see the replacements for certain structures. Like if this one's collapsing, well, this one's going to come up and replace it. I do feel like there's a couple of things that we need to have a kind of near-death experience around, you could say, the money being one of them. I mean, when you look at, everybody had a different experience through the lockdown narrative, right? For some people, it was devastating. They lost everything. They lost people, they lost loved ones, they lost businesses, homes, all of it. Others had the best holiday they've had in years, right? But what it did allow for was a reevaluation of what's important. It did allow for a breaking down of the programs of who we think we are and what we identify ourselves with. If you are your job, if you are your title, if you are your house, if you are, because I've got a nice house in a nice suburb and that's who I am, or the car I drive, or whatever it is that you think makes up who you are, and that stuff's gone, then you have to reevaluate who you are. And so there was a lot of that. And there are still programs around who we think we are that need to go. So if that means having a near-death experience around money, I think that's coming. But I don't think these things are going to last for very long. I don't think we're going to be kept in a place of absolute despair. It's going to be seemingly a moment. And whatever is going to collapse and be gone needs to go, because it's built on lies, deception, harvesting, corruption, whatever. And something that is built on truth and integrity and support is going to replace it. So we're sort of doing this slow transition into something better and better and better and better and better, because that's the journey the minds need to go on.
To be retrained again.
Yeah. And I don't think that even that's going to last all that long.
Do you feel like there is a direct correlation between the build-up? All right, because I think I've been talking a lot about the same thing that you've been talking about, but more on a personal level, of the build-up of, oh my God, this is going to happen. Everything's like coming into full alignment, and then the ass drops out of it. And you're speaking about that in terms of like global things, and we've witnessed and experienced so many of them in the 7-year loop. I can't even, the highs and the devastations that go hand in hand have been utterly traumatic, to say the least. Do you feel like there is a direct correlation between the build-up of people reclaiming their consciousness, their aspects, and building stronger within themselves, that builds to the crescendo, I can't get that word out, of these more global events? Do you think there's a direct?
So there'd have to be. It is a bit chicken or the egg, but they'd have to be hand in hand. One thing, when was it? I do a weekly update, and one of them was called Fire in the Template. It was a few weeks ago. And I felt this energy come through what I call the template, like the actual code of the construct. And the message that went with it was this almost frustrated, could you just guys all just get it, that it's all you. You're doing all of this. So yeah, I guess it's a result of,
Mm,
the more that we come into wholeness, the more we pull in all of these aspects, the more we understand who we are, the more we understand the power that we actually have to create or manipulate or whatever the environment. For sure. Yeah, that makes sense
mm.
that it is the result.
Yeah, something that's been coming through to me for months now is that I have to be rebuilt to be in the strongest place I could possibly be before certain things start to unfold. And I've heard other people recite that to me. And so I guess as you were talking, I was like, oh, I think
Other
that,
people are getting the same message for themselves or for
mm,
you. Okay.
no, other, yeah, yeah. And I was like, oh, interesting, interesting. Um,
Well, there's actually funny you say because I think, and I don't know if I've told you or not, but there's been a couple of times now where I felt like, yeah, I'm being stripped to the core. And I don't mean that in a like a negative emotional trauma sense. I mean, like in my body,
mm,
cellular level stuff
mm,
is being stripped. Yeah, stripped is the best word for it. Yeah, stripped back to the essential elements and then built upon.
yeah.
Yeah. So for me, you asked me what the next little bit looks like. That's July,
Mm,
August, and for whatever reason, September's got Trump's name all over it. I don't know why. Um, October, I've got nothing standing out. And then November, everything feels like it's lit up. Everything feels like it gets better again,
mm, mhm,
which is strange that nothing for October because I've had this thing about March and October for years. Because I think the year energetically seems to go from March to October, and then it's another flavor from October to March,
mm,
and then it's another one from March to October.
mm.
Um, which I think is why we have the 9/11 ritual. It's like it's almost like their end of year, end of financial year fire sale. We've got to get whatever rituals and everything ready for the next
Mm, mhm,
phase, cycle. Because there's usually stuff that goes down in March as well, or April even. It's
mm.
like to kick off the next.
Yeah.
So things tend to happen in clusters
Mm.
around certain times of the year.
So,
But yes, we both picked up on stuff just in the last couple of days.
mm,
So what day is it today? Tuesday. So Sunday for me, I got what I call pulled, which is like you hear 1 minute and then you can't stay awake the next. And slept from 4:30 in the afternoon, and I only woke up at 6:30 because my husband woke me up. And I woke up with this sense of having been worked on physically, like I'd gone through some sort of healing. And when I went to sleep, I had a backache that I'd had all day, which I equate with energetics coming in as well. That was gone. And this sense of excitement. And then I got up. Oh, I wasn't up for very long, only a couple of hours, enough to have some dinner, go and crash back out again. So I was up at 5 o'clock yesterday morning, Monday morning. And I couldn't wait to get on my computer because I had that feeling of I was looking for something. I was looking for, where's the confirmation? Where is the... And I spent a couple of hours doing that, and feeling the environment was electrified with excitement. It was exciting, like all the molecules in the air were just buzzing. And I was so excited. I was beside myself. And then you ring me and said, go on.
I was like, something's going on. I had this message that came through early this morning. I don't know what it means, but all it kept repeating was, it has begun.
Well,
And
that tipped me over the edge.
I was literally not thinking about anything. I sat in my car, and as I turned on the key in the ignition, I heard the words in that voice, that booming voice that I often get normally when I'm waking up. So it was interesting to have it, you know, after I've been up for a little while. And yeah, it has begun, and nothing else. So I was like, went for my walk, pondered on it, nothing came. Call Lisa. Maybe she. um,
Well,
and
then I have an experience last night.
well, then we had an X class solar flare happen like an hour or two later, and then go into your experience later.
Oh, I wasn't keeping track of the solar stuff yesterday, but last night, yeah, last night I was on a Zoom call with a friend, and I felt home. So I was trying to tune into that, and I got this distinct energetic signature of someone from home that I know. And the first words were, "It begins now." I'm like, "Get fucked. What begins now?" And I got, "It begins now, your time," as opposed to, "Hey, it's happening at home," which plays out in 6 years. And then, "Well done. It is done. The war is over. The new has begun. Welcome home." And the first thing I did was call you. So it was like, what do I do with this? So
That makes me cry.
hmm.
And it makes me really emotional, and that like overwhelm of like, oh my god, that sense of relief of like, wow, we've done it. And I think when you shared that, the first thing that came to mind that correlates, um uh, yeah, um I mean, I know that we've been in this war, believe me, I have the battle scars to prove it.
Mm.
But in the end of December last year, I think it was like December 27th, I got taken out of my body. And I had a visitation by a being that I felt familiar, but I hadn't seen before. And she came in and said to me, there's a war going on out there, you know, and then said to me, but it's okay. Everything's going to be okay. It's had this sense of like, we're kind of wrapping up. There's a finality to it. Fast forward a month later in January, once again, I've received this message that was like, it's completed, but now we're in the wrapping up phase. But in their time, like it's completed, but not, you know. And my experience since then and now has been this horrendous. Like it's been it's been a challenging year for me, in terms of being aware more energetically or internally, but being aware of the battles. And I know this because I've spoken to a lot of people who have recall from dreams or being, you know.
Mm.
And then you come through with that message, and it's like, oh,
Well, I think that's why they specified your time.
yeah, yeah.
And hopefully that tells you what your "it has begun" means. Um, but I mean, you just sort of reminded me that even back in 2020, on February 14, Valentine's Day, Home came in and said, "The pull has begun." And we start with the negative 33 pull.
Negative what?
The negative 33 pull.
Ah, okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
well, within a month, the whole world was in lockdown and under this narrative, right? It took 13 months. They came back in March of 21 to say that that's done. And now we're going to start with the positive pull. Now, I'm sure at home it took 5 fucking minutes, but we are getting closer and closer and closer to what we're picking up in the energetic and having it play out in the physical. And
yeah,
a lot of just as much as I've said that a lot of the communication were home, bigger picture stuff was, 1, 2, 3 years in advance. Just as much of it, especially the more personal stuff, was in real time. So I know they had the ability to connect in real time and see what was going on in real time. But still, the word soon had multiple meanings, apparently. But yeah, the other thing I saw last night in amongst all that message was the weapons of war are retired, basically. So who knows what this is going to look like? But it feels very, very good.
I got the sense when you were sharing before about, everything coming to a crescendo, every narrative kind of playing out as it needs to, and then moving into a solution focused phase of things getting better and better. I wonder, so the insights that I've gained over for the last couple of years would be that we would, well, initially going back to 2016, my understanding of how things were going to roll or play out was that there was going to be some big sort of cosmic or energetic flash event, sky, but there's many terminology for it, that was going to coincide with the dismantling of all the inverted structures. But that would happen first, then there would be kind of a relief energy that kind of activated or sparked everyone back into a higher level of consciousness, and then the rebuild would happen. But I always kind of saw it as this kind of quick into what I call New Earth, and I think you've referred to as home. I believe at the same place, and
yeah,
that was like my first impression. And then obviously it's changed over the years, and I've come to this understanding that there is this in-between phase of not being into New Earth, but still being here, but in a reversed, or the inverted will be reversed, and things will go back to more organic,
right side up. Yeah,
right, yeah, space where we can enjoy, and that it is a place of training, of kind of
you're singing my song just with different words. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That we can reprogram, if you will, or retrain ourselves to be in preparation so that we can transition fully into what I understand as the new Earth reality. Because it will require that as almost a rehabilitation to have and I think you said it perfectly. I can't remember the words but like there's been so much trauma and negativity of things going wrong that we almost have to retrain that the other shoe's not going to drop.
Yeah. Things can go right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's a couple of things in there. So we're in overtime, right? As we talked about. So this space that we're in, this new construct, this copy, whatever, has to close out at some point too. And I think while we've been doing this scenic route, we've discovered that we probably still aren't going to get where we need to be by the time this place has to close out.
Yeah.
And so from what I understand, a new realm, you can call it a realm or a construct, I don't know, was created to give us even more time.
Mm.
And this will be, what was it? How was it described? It's exquisite, I think was the word they used. It's exquisite. So I think that we will, okay, baby, Dan, you get, I think that we will actually transition into what people are potentially calling New Earth, but I think it is, I call it LeeLoo's realm, right? But I don't know what else to call it, because apparently she had a hand in creating it. I don't know. Or designing it, whatever. But it's a space. Sorry, LeeLoo. My dog's called LeeLoo too. You need to get down. Yes. You're all tangled up. Come on, down you get. Stop. Down, 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 down. Go. I think we make a seamless transition. Like no one really knew. So I can't prove it, but no one really knew in real time that we'd shifted from one construct to another in 2013, right? We just had our lives turn upside down. So I think we make this seamless transition into what I'm calling LeeLoo's realm, which is this exquisite, uncorrupted, everything's the right side up world, reality, where people, like you say, go through this training period where they relearn who they are, they relearn how they can manifest and create their experiences. They can have the game they came here to play in the first place, all of that. But to even get ready for that, we need to see some solutions. We need to see some new structures come online. We need to, just to even get ready for that, so that the mind has this seamless transition. And there are times where I think we're already in it.
Yeah. I agree. I have moments or days of it, and so I feel like it's moving in, but it doesn't hold. It hasn't fully anchored yet.
No.
Yeah.
From that point though, and I was shown it once. I have told this story a couple of times, so I don't want to bore everybody if they've heard it before, but I was shown it to be, and I call it neighborhoods, right? So let's say you've got this new realm and there's all these different neighborhoods that are separated by frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's going to go to the frequency that they are attuned to and play out the storyline, the narrative, the whatever that they've all got in common. There will be individuals who will be able to go between that space and what I'm calling home, and go between the two.
Yep.
And then, but that space doesn't last long forever either. That's your transition space. It's to just be in an environment where everything's the right way up, and no longer inverted, no longer manipulated or corrupted or whatever. And the minds just continue to evolve and awaken and remember. I know it sounds fantastical. I know. I realize that.
No, you've just described what I've seen multiple times. I've seen pockets of communities, just like I've seen it like on a map of the planet, and I see pockets of lighting up, and I know that that's communities or lighthouses where people are being drawn to, and there's this kind of migration that I can already see that's occurring now amongst people who feel the call to move or to change location, whatever. And that kind of widens. It's almost like that the energy that is emanated or generated through those people coming together and what they create expands. But yes, I've also been told that there will be people that will be able to go back and forth between the in between the preparatory place and into the new earth. And I was told back in 2017. So my first contact happened in 2015 on September solstice. I was visited by a being who entered into my room, who appeared as an Indigenous woman. I didn't know who she was. She came in and all she said to me was, I can't even remember. I can't remember word for word, but she said to me, what I've come here to thank you for what you and your people will do over the coming 2 years. She said, you and she referred to it as tribe. So I always write my posts as soul tribe because she referred to it as a tribe of people, which I think is soul groups. She said, I want to thank you in advance for the work that you will do over the coming 2 years. She was very specific. It wasn't a few years, it was 2 years. And she said, you don't know your greatness yet, as in not me, but us.
Yep.
She said, but you will.
But you will. Yeah.
And she said, for that, I want to thank you in advance. And then turned and walked out of my bedroom. And I said, hey, hang on. Hang on. Who are you? And she turned back and her words were, they call me mother, mother of the earth. And she disappeared.
Oh, wow.
But she showed up as an Indigenous woman. And I haven't really had any other. She came in a little bit around 2016, 2017. I had a few moments of contact with her. I don't anymore. But in 2017, and I always know when she's going to make an appearance because, like you, the frequency, my whole body vibrates, and I get her normally in the shower. She's going to make contact. And she told me in 2017, it was epic. The energy that was pouring through me was just insane. And she was telling me how I would be one of the first to migrate into New Earth. And I had so many questions because I'm like, you tell me these things, but I don't understand. My human does not understand. What the hell does that mean? And what does it look like? like, like you said, fantastical, but like what? And I said, well, does that mean that I will exist in both realities? Does that mean, like, what does that mean? And her response to me was, when you go on holiday, do you exist in both realities? I was like, no. It is the same thing. Think about it as like you're going on a holiday, you temporarily go somewhere, you come back.
Okay. Fuck. You just reminded me. I had completely forgotten about this.
Mm.
And I can't even tell you when it was. It might have been it's before LeeLoo. It's before all of this. I also had a visit by an Indigenous woman. And in mine, she was an older woman.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a young Indigenous man in the background. He was like her warrior protector. I can't remember what she said. I remember being quite shocked about it at the time. But also, when was the last time you spoke to this being?
I remember it was March 2017 when she told me that. She could have been, I may have had some contact with her up until 2018, but I don't think after that.
So 2017.
Mm.
This 2017 is when a being came through the computer that I had a conversation with, that LeeLoo brought forward, who said, you would call me Earth, Mother Earth,
Mm.
but I'm not. the planet. I am not. That's not what I am. My role is to support all life in the realm. That's what I do. She was I don't know, kind of, people think of a creator as like a single person who made this construct, and if there was one, say, initial designer, then she would be his counterpart. It was her job to support the life. And I just said, why don't you just support the good stuff and like let the rest of it just fade away? She said, I can't do that. I have to support all life. And then she left. Left. She said, she basically came to say goodbye. I am now going to support, I'm out of here. I'm now going to support the new.
Interesting.
And I was like, well, what's going to support us now? And they said, you are. You're kind of running on your own sustenance now. And it came at a time when, in 17, when it was pretty hard going for people. I'm trying to remember what was being picked up, but I can't, which I can't, but what I can remember is during that conversation going, why is everyone having such a fucking hard time right now? And it was like, because Earth's leaving. And then she was brought forward to say goodbye. So that's interesting. You haven't heard from her since?
No, I haven't. And I haven't even really thought about it because obviously different characters have come in and, there's been tangents to play down. But
and when you say the energy, this may not be a question you want to answer. But have you ever done MDMA or ecstasy? Was it a lot like that? Fuck. Oh, man. It was constant rushes. And I was like, oh, I haven't had anything like this since, my clubbing days. It was intense.
I remember writing a post one day on Christmas Day. I was having internal tanty about no one understands me and why am I so different, and I have to spend time with family. They all think I'm a kook. And it kind of took me on this tangent of how could I try and explain to people what it's like when I go into those heightened experiences and I'm forever changed. And, they happen, incrementally. And I found this quote. I can't even remember who wrote the quote. Salvador Dali, maybe. I don't know. I'm sorry if I hashed that up. But the quote is, I don't need drugs, I am drugs, or I don't do drugs, I am drugs. And I was like, yeah.
So this is like what I was saying earlier. It's like you're living a double life. You've got to go out there and present as a normie and come home to all of these experiences and these psychic awarenesses and telepathic communications and shit going on, and conversations with beings outside the construct in your computer, and Mother Earth visiting you, and and it's just like, how do you can't be all of that all of the time, everywhere, with everyone. You got to.
Well, I tried to be in the beginning, and that didn't fare well for me.
So. Yeah, it's not a great way to win friends and influence people.
But when I went through my very first, so the Indigenous being showed up, and then that was September 21. Oh, it was the night of the equinox, 2015. And then I went through my Kundalini activation through the connection with another in November. So it was like not much happened in October, and then November was like And that wasn't the first time I've been through activation like that, but that one was like the crescendo of all crescendos, because the other ones had only lasted like a couple, yeah, at most 2 days, and then the
Mm.
crash comes. That one lasted from, that one happened, I think it was, I can't remember exactly. It was either on or around 11/11. It could have been the 13th of November. And it was in that window period. And that one extended itself well and truly until about February the 2016. And then the almighty crash
Yeah.
happened. But what I was, because that was like the most, I reflect on that time of my life, and that truly I still think so fondly of that time in my life. I feel like that was one of the most best experiences of my entire life. I would love to feel that way every day. And I
Mm.
have been told that that's where we're moving to, is to embody that at a permanent baseline frequency. And I truly believe that we're in those experiences given a taste of what's possible so we can attune to that, acclimate to that. But I was like, I mean, you become off the chain psychic. Everyone stares at you when you in public. There must be something that's emanating that people either can see or can't see
Yep.
that they're aware of. But did you have this? I was going into shopping centers, and it was like a Terminator moment. Like I would look at people and I could read, it was showing me like a split screen beside their face. And there were all these like, it was like binary code sequencing numbers that was appearing beside them, and it was like their statistics. Have you ever, I mean, that was a trip.
That sounds like a trip. No, no, I can so relate to all of that though. Um, but no, not that part. Just for me, it was just knowing. And it's almost like I was having a conversation with them, but they weren't actually speaking. Oh, you're going to England? Okay. And they're like, how do you know that? Okay. Uh, I just do. I don't know. Didn't you say that? But yeah, the staring. I mean, I had two. I was in PA, as I said, and someone used to love taking me to the supermarket to go shopping, and they would just walk behind me with a trolley and watch. And it was like every time I needed to go to the supermarket, I'll go, because they thought it was fucking hysterical to just watch people just stop dead in their tracks and stare at me.
Yeah.
And I remember being at the airport to fly out, and I was in the lift by myself. I was going downstairs to get a drink, and as the doors, we hit the ground, and I could hear voices on the other side of the door because the doors didn't open for like 2 seconds. And as the doors opened, there was two men there with, I think, four young boys under the age of 10. The doors open, and they're all standing there waiting to walk in, and they all just go, and mouths drop and all of that, right? And then they part like the fucking the sea parts. And I walk through, and the kids are going, "Who's that?" And the dads are going, "I don't know." It was the weirdest. I didn't know whether to be scared or paranoid or what, but it was, yeah, kind of weird.
Oh, good times, the good
Good
times.
times, yeah, but weird
I
times.
wonder whether this has just come to my mind. I wonder whether, because at that moment when I got lit, I mean, clearly more of my higher self stepped in at that point.
Yeah.
I wasn't sleeping. I was just, you know, from the outside, anyone looking in, I would have looked completely bonkers and manic. But I was just loving every second of it. Like I was just playing in the energy, the realms. I was interfacing all sorts of beings. But the thing that came through the strongest for me was I knew at that point I had jumped off a timeline. This is only, I've gained that in hindsight. I realized that I had jumped off a timeline that I had no exercise of my own free will at that point. And
when you were in this heightened state, or that's where you'd come from?
So how do I describe? Prior to that, I believe that I had some aspects of my own free will. After that, I realized I had tipped into a trajectory where I was only working what I call divine will path. So therefore, I could only do and experience what had already been assigned by me prior to coming in here, so that I was on my path. Like, I felt like at that point I had no choice in how if I wanted to, I'm just going to go off for a holiday to Thailand. Oh, no. You're on this path now and you have to do all these things. And part of that was, obviously, that was when all my healing abilities became really heightened and activated, and I started to step into this work. But I felt like what my role was I had to activate very specific people. And I went on this crazy frenzy, but it was like I was identifying who they truly were, and I needed them to remember who they were.
Sorry, you're tapping into a conversation I had last night.
And this is only just coming up now because I was on such a mission. Like, that's what I mean. Like, I was on mission mode at that point. And the path to the planet's ascension was the only important thing that I had to get everyone on board. Obviously, but yeah, and the people that just rallied and came into my life, and the way, because I was talking about the Terminator thing, the way that I could read their signature was insane. Yeah.
It sucks when that goes away, isn't it? But I can so relate to your story there, because I know everything going back to 2009, really, from this urge to do something, to a Kundalini experience I had in 2013 in the desert in Sahara, of all places to have one. Changed my trajectory completely. And then that Christmas Day 13 experience, if I hadn't had that, I wouldn't be with my current partner, my husband. And we needed to be together in order for what has played out since, because we have got some sort of an agreement, an arrangement, to do what we do with home, and we needed to be together for that. So all of these things had to happen in order to make that happen. But it wouldn't, I wouldn't have gone there had it not been for that experience and the effect it had on me. So everything when you look back, it all just lines up and it all gets you to exactly where you're meant to be.
Always. Yeah. Always. So I know we've been going for a while now.
Oh shit, we have two. Look at
that. So I think we might bring it into conclusion for now, but I have this feeling that there may be a lot more to come and share. So just a taste introductory. But
just a quick 2-hour introduction.
But I want to finish on a high in terms of, I'd love you to share if there's anything more you have to share about, like, where we're moving to in terms of, like, the potentiality of our experience in the preparatory phase, or going back home, in terms of what that experience will be like or look like. Or,
well, I wish I knew for sure. But I've been calling them integrity checks. it feels like we're all individually and collectively on a very straight and narrow path, as I said, and it's all leading in the same direction, which is home eventually. And these little integrity checks are opportunities to travel this path at a higher and higher frequency, it feels like, which will determine exactly which neighborhood we land in later. Right? There's no pass or fail, really. It's just fine-tuning your own frequency. Yeah, it's not really about pass or fail or right or wrong. It's just about what is going to match your consciousness the best. Yeah. And we all want to go as high as we can. So there's that. But I think the opportunity for better and better and better and better experiences is already here. And I am incredibly excited. I still think we're going to get, and this is not to put anybody into fear at all. The whole point of these things are to give us an opportunity to step out of fear. But there's going to be shit still. We may still get a nuclear scare. We may get the financial near-death experience. We may get, but a lot of it is just stories and opportunities for us to buy into it or not, feed it, fuel it or not, pull back that aspect of our consciousness that is invested in these particular narratives or not. And it's just about fine-tuning our own frequency, I think, and cleaning up our own signature. There's been a lot of, how do I put this? Well, just like we say out there in the 3D world, that there are people out there wearing masks, and not everybody's who you think they are. Well, on the energetic front, that's the same. Like, we've had our signatures kind of copied and placed on other beings, and we've had good people that have had negative signatures overlaid on theirs, and even Home was shocked to find people weren't who they thought they were, because they were looking at signatures and then had to go and check and double check and triple check that person was actually that person. And so even they've had some surprises. So it's about cleaning up our signature. And the one thing I do honestly, down to my core, believe is that no one gets left behind. Everybody that is of home goes home. And not everybody in here is from home, so to speak. But everybody who's from home goes home. No one left behind. That's the whole point. That's why it's taking so long.
And that's been my point from the beginning. We've got to get everyone across the line.
Yeah. So fun and games until then, but I think more fun as we go. And everything's going to be a matter of perspective, really. I mean, it always has been, but if the financial collapses, it's all about how you react to that. It's all about how you feel about that. It's all about what you think that means. It's not really about the fact that it did. It's about how we react. That's how I see it.
And I think it's also keeping in mind that when these systems and structures do collapse, or if they do, know in the chaotic period of turbulence that it's only happening so something better can come into play.
There's a phrase that I keep telling myself, and I have to remind myself, that everything is happening for me, not to me. And I did talk about this on one of the weekly updates, that it feels to me like for everything that seemingly is devastating that's going to come in or mind shattering, we're not going to be left there for long, and something supportive comes in, a supportive energy comes in right underneath it. We're left there just long enough to question something or whatever, and then and it just feels like waves of that are going to come in. Something comes in to catch us every time. If we let it. If we're open to it,
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you, Lisa. I can't thank you enough for this conversation, and
no, thank you
in advance for the many more that will come through. Lisa does weekly updates, which I'll put all the details in the description box below, but I highly recommend Saturdays, and it alternates between AM and PM Australian Eastern Standard Time to give people from everywhere in the globe opportunity to join at a reasonable hour. So every Saturday, so I'll put that. I often pop in because I enjoy them thoroughly. Lisa shares.
It's good to have you there too.
Lisa shares her updates and then creates an open forum, and there's amazing people that join and share. And generally, it's really good confirming conversation. Lisa also does personal consults where you can connect with her for individual one-on-one sessions. So I'll put all the details in the description box below if you feel a resonance and feel guided to connect with her in that capacity as well. So thank you so much once again, Lisa. We'll be in touch as this. I don't know why I get this feeling as I'm closing out. When it was like everything was like boom, go time during like 2020 and everyone was like pumping out the content because there was so much to cover. Kind of get that feeling coming up, but we'll see.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
So thank you everyone for watching.
It has begun, whatever that means.
It has begun. That's what I'm going to title this video. It has begun. So thank you everyone for watching. And once again, thanks Lisa, and we'll connect soon. So
Okay, Dom.
until then.
Bye.
Bye.